Good morning. This week's Torah portion is the story of Jacob. And we all know what happens to Jacob. Jacob flees from his brother Esav, gets married, establishes his family, and ultimately he has to confront his brother Esav. And ultimately he wrestles with an angel and is renamed from Jacob to Israel, from Yaakov to Yisrael. Now this is so significant, this event, and the transformation from Jacob to Israel, that we collectively as Jews are called Yisrael. And the question is, what is the message? So we know that a name represents the essence of a person. As a matter of fact, the word Shem in Hebrew is the root middle letters of the word Neshama, soul. Your name is your spiritual tunnel to your soul. The word Yaakov means the one who is holding on to the heel of his brother. When Jacob left the womb, he was grasping the heel of his brother Esav, and he was called Yaakov from the word Akev, heel. Yisrael means you are a prince of God. And the message is that at first, Yaakov was striving to be his older brother. He was trying to be someone and something that he was not truly destined to become. But ultimately, he embraced his own identity and said, you know, I'm a Jew, and my mission in this world is not to be envious or try to usurp the role of my brother by taking his blessings, but my role in this world is to be a visible, proud, and identifiable Jew, Yisrael. And that's the name we carry till today. Sometimes because we are a small minority, we try to fit in, to assimilate. But we ultimately have to realize we have to stop grasping for the heels of others, but rather hold our head proud and tall in our identity as Yisrael, a prince of God, an ambassador of God in this world. It's an amazing story that happened this past week. The bishop of Haifa, Israel, passed away. His name was Father Gregory Pavlovsky. But his story actually began when, in 1942, his real name was Yaakov Tzvi Grinner. He was born to Mendel and Miriam Grinner, and he was born in Ishbitz, Poland. And in 1942, he was 10 years old. The Nazis came and they were liquidating the ghetto and sending Jews off to the death camps. And his father was shot before his eyes by the Nazis. His older brother fled. His name was Chaim, and he managed to get to Russia and eventually made it to Palestine. He was a child of 10 years old, and he ran away into the streets of Ishbitz. Meanwhile, the Nazis took his mother and his two sisters, together with 4,000 Jews, had them dig a mass grave outside of the city, and shot them dead into this mass grave. Little Yaakov Tzvi ran around the streets looking for safety until some families took him in and hid him from the Nazis. But they said to him, in order to save your life, we have to change your name. And they took him to be baptized. And they gave him baptism papers. And his new name on the baptism papers was Gregory Pavlovsky. And they said, from now on, you're no longer Yaakov Tzvi, you're Gregory Pavlovsky. And many times the Gestapo stopped him, and he would produce his baptism papers, which saved his life. In 1948, when he finished high school, he was a brilliant student. He decided to go into the seminary to become a priest. And he graduated and became a priest, and he was assigned in Radin, Poland, to be a priest. In 1966, on the 1000th anniversary of Christianity in Poland, he published a paper telling his true story of his true identity as Yaakov Tzvi Grinner, a Jewish boy. His brother in Israel, Chaim, read the article and realized his brother survived, and the brothers were reunited. And Yaakov Tzvi Grinner, who is now Father Gregory Pavlovsky, decides to make Aliyah, move to Israel to be reunited with his brother. And he becomes a priest in Haifa, Israel, and eventually becomes the bishop of Haifa, Israel. And although he was the bishop, he put a mezuzah on his door. He would not eat bread on Passover, and he fasted on Yom Kippur. And he said, I belong to two nations, Poland, that saved my life, and to the Jewish nation to which I was born. Well, this week, Father Gregory Pavlovsky died on the Tuesday of last week at the age of 91 years old. And in his will, he said, I want to be buried as a Jew. I was born a Jew, I lived as a Christian, but I want to die as a Jew. And he asked to have a kosher, proper Jewish burial with a minyan and kaddish to be recited. And he asked that his body be flown back to Poland to be buried next to the mass grave where his mother and sisters were shot to death. And he personally wrote a marker that he asked to be put up at his gravesite. And in this marker he wrote, Father Gregory Pavlovsky, Yaakov Tzvi, the son of Mendel and Miriam. I was born a Jew. I lived as a Christian, but I am going to die as a Jew. I abandoned my family to save my life, and my parents were murdered for the sanctification of God's name, and I've dedicated my life to God and to humanity. May their memory be an everlasting blessing. This is the story of a Jew who lived between two worlds. Like Jacob in this week's parsha, he was named Yaakov at his circumcision at 8 days old. He lived his entire life as a Christian, but ultimately he proclaimed, I am ultimately Yisrael. I am a Jew. I have a Jewish heart, a Jewish soul. I can never deny that. And ultimately, upon my death, I will return to my people. Each and every one of us must make sure that we are living a life of Yisrael, where we are verbally and visibly proud, identifiable Jews who stand for our traditions, for our heritage, for our people. And in the merit of that, Am Yisrael Chai. Have a wonderful day.